Right about now, you are listening to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, a show where we discuss living as a leader worth following, leading others to do the same, and in doing so, leaving a legacy for future generations. My name is Jimmy Gonzalez Jr., a learning and development professional and leadership coach, sitting down with my co host, Anthony Devon Watts Jr., an expert contact center leader that has effectively led and developed dynamic teams with high motivation. Together, we have over 30 years' experience in the corporate game. Join us as we discuss our growth as leaders, share the lessons we've learned, and interview others to see how their leadership style was shaped as they were mentored by adversity. The last tenet that we're going to speak about in regards to employee engagement is employee development. Something that we're both super passionate about. I think we're passionate about all these things, but that's where the coaching really comes in, and coaching and training and learning and development, and opportunities to get in front of people and just kind of run your mouth and stuff like that in training sessions. But it's super important to invest in your people, right? And we talked about earlier about return on investment. What type of return are you going to get in the time and calories that you invest in your people? And not, and you mentioned before that, when we talk about developmental conversations, like every conversation you have with your team members should really be a developmental conversation. And I think depending on where they're at in their career, they may be thinking, I want these conversations to be about career development and how can I continue to move up and progress, which are definitely important conversations to have. But how do we also just kind of on a normal, monthly, official kind of monthly review, how do you help them to develop skills even in those conversations by talking about what their goals are? What are we trying to hit at the end of this month? And then how do we reverse engineer the steps that you're going to need to take to be able to hit that goal in the next 4 weeks? Or if we're looking at a quarter, looking at over 90 days, even those things, that's in itself is a skill. Some people are not, they're just not adept about, how do I really recognize what the goal is, and then how do I put an action plan together to help myself strategically go through the next 4 weeks or 3 months to hit that goal. So all of those things should be, again, all those conversations are really developmental conversations that you're having with your people, and in doing so, it really does help when, as a leader, you're engaging in those conversations on a consistent basis. I know, we tended to have conversations maybe once a week, with our leaders and our team members. But at least having one that's kind of that, again, that formal, coaching conversation that you would have, especially at the beginning of the month, right? But those things should be engaging conversations. You should be looking to develop their skills, their knowledge base, within those conversations and in those moments, and make sure that, when you're doing so, the feedback is on point. The feedback that you're providing them is specific, it's detailed in the things that you expect, and it's specific and detailed in maybe observations you made on things that you would like to see them work on, so that there's acceptance of that, there's an understanding of those things, and then they have a good idea of the steps that they need to take moving forward. So engaging in these conversations, developing your direct reports, making sure that you're providing really good feedback and that you're getting feedback from them on the interactions, because we don't always have it all figured out, right? So how do I make sure that I'm doing right by this person, and I'm not just going in there, like we talked about culture, right? Like it's just something that I'm doing because I have to do it, and I'm not being intentional about the conversation and this interaction that I'm going to have with my team member.
Yeah, there's that word again, Mama. There's that word again, intentional. Right?
Intentional.
I think the other thing too that you kind of hit on or alluded to, not only that these every discussion or every conversation, every interaction should you should be seeking it to be a development conversation. Like somebody should get something from it.
Yes.
Right. But also, I think when you're doing it right, when you talk about driving engagement, it is also about intent, right? Like if it's coming from a place, right? So if you're having development conversations coming from a place of your own self-interest, right? And you're not really concerned necessarily about what somebody aspires to or what their next steps are or what they want for themselves, right? But we're calling it development, right? Development is I got to convince you to apply for this role, even though you want to be an individual contributor, because if I get you in this leadership role, then that'll open up this, and then I can promote somebody else, and then when I move off to something else, like if it's all rooted in some type of self-serving reason, then people feel that, and people feel that in the interactions, and then you undermine the entire employee development process and conversation, right? It's just cheapened. I was sharing with you a recent experience I had where somebody that I've worked with in the past reached out to me out of the blue. Again, we've had no conversations, no interactions for like 6, 7, 8 months, and then even prior to that, when we worked together, the interactions were always rooted in self-serving for them, right? What they could get from it. And so I peeped that, I felt that, I peeped it so I could feed him with a long spoon, right? But just randomly out of the blue, right? You want to take interest in my career. When you've moved on to something else, I've moved on to something else, and I already knew what time it was. I had no interest in really engaging in the conversation, and I made it very apparent I was happy with where I'm at, right? To drive that person away, and that's, again, it's because I knew that it was not genuine. The intent was off. And then I think about an example of where, when the intention is coming from a place of, truly, looking out for what's in the best interest of the person that you're leading or you're building the relationship with and you're developing. I can think of no better example than my experience again with our good friend Richard, right? And as we were going through the process, and you guys, our listeners have heard me kind of share, over past episodes, my experience with being furloughed and then finding a new opportunity where I'm at. But even in that period of uncertainty and getting ready to figure out, well, what do I do? Am I waiting around so that when the business is in a better position, they can bring me back, right? Or do I make the decision to see what else is out there? When he had the conversation with me, while I knew what was in his interest, which was, hey, I didn't, we want you back. Like, I want you back tomorrow if I can bring you back tomorrow type situation. For him to be able to say, look, my priority is making sure what's best for you and your family. You need to explore your options, explore what's out there. And when I called and gave him the news that I got an offer that I was going to accept, and I was going to relocate my family, and that I was going to officially resign from my position so that they can pursue backfilling. Again, I just remember the conversation vividly of like, man, I'm so happy for you. This is going to suck for me, but I'm so happy. So happy for you, and and again, that's the epitome, going back to what you mentioned about culture and transparency. He's one of those individuals I hold up there in terms of that standard of like, that's the gold standard for transparency, radical transparency. But when he said it, I knew it. I knew the intention was genuine. I knew I felt it. So I knew when I was making that call and giving him the news, I knew oh man, he's not going to be happy about this, but he's going to be ecstatic about this. And those two things can exist, right? And I think it's important as a leader, you have to understand, for me, when I approach the development conversations with my team and I'm working on them, I engage in those conversations with the full intent of giving them every single tool that they need, that they can go off and leave me and leave this organization and leave this role and be wildly successful. It's not what I want. I prefer to continue to work with them and to see them grow and to see them blossom and to see them continue to contribute to the organization at a high level and be a part of that story and have a front row seat to their success. But I go into the conversations, at peace and with the intention of I have to give them everything that they need to be successful, so that they have to make a decision around, do I stay here or do I move on to something else? And the only reason they would make a decision to move on to something else is because they're ready. The opportunity doesn't exist where we're currently at, right? And this is the better move for them and their family. And in that situation, even then, I don't lose.
Yeah.
I win. I win because I played a hand in that, and to be able to, like, I did my job as a coach, as a leader.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.
You have just listened to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, hosted by Jimmy Gonzalez and Devon Watts. Thank you, and we hope that you live, lead, and leave a legacy worth remembering. Until next time.